Stephanie Bendixsen. Welcome to another episode of Move, where we are looking at the future of personal transportation. So hang about to find out what's going to move me. In this episode, it's all about me. You know how it is with us personalities. But by me, what I actually mean is you. Hopefully that's not too confusing, but how are us as individuals going to move around? Things have changed in recent years. There was the Segway, of course, which was supposed to revolutionize personal transportation, but ended up being best known as a running gag on Arrested Development. In fact, tech has less revolutionized the transport itself than the way in which it's used. Anyone can now make some extra income by ride sharing. Or on the other side of the coin, ensure that their driver is going to give them a 5-star transport experience. Or if they feel like having a whinge about, well, a 3-star experience. Ride sharing also means that non-drivers such as the elderly, mobility challenged, or children have easier access to travel. And we can all appreciate the ability to track safety, and most of us really enjoy the mints. I can't understand why no one has started up a free mint taxi thing as an attempt to combat the Uberlution. Or will the future be smart shuttles? Driverless cars picking you up from your door and then taking you direct to your destination before popping off to get the next customer? Your mints could be doing the driving. Or what about if there were virtual bus stops on every street and buses would route themselves to the stops on demand? Imagine the brave new world where public transport came to the public. Depending on how you ride, it seems everyone has an opinion on how you should ride, who you should ride with and when. But we hit the streets to ask.
I live on the south coast, so we carpool into Sydney all the time. It's really handy and it saves heaps of money.
I think any decent person, I wouldn't mind.
Chips are Rafferty at first.
Obviously with my family because they work in the city too, so it would be easier.
Bruce Springsteen.
My girlfriend.
Probably a mother such as myself where we're going the same sort of ways and doing the same things.
Well, we have with us two guests who hail from two different companies who help us understand the potential of mobility as a service now and into the future. Please welcome Director of Corporate Affairs for multimodal transport company Keolis Downer, Ségolène Deeley. And also Head of Customer Success for AI-powered data analyst Hyper Anna, Anthony Slater. So we're seeing the evolution of a mobility as a service, or MaaS. So what does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people are moving away from this idea that transport needs to be a fixed cost, where I own my own vehicle and this vehicle needs to be able to take me from work as well as on road trips, as well as when I'm picking up all my kids, to this idea that, well, mobility can be something that I subscribe to, that I have a lot more options for. So if I want to take a vehicle for a road trip, well, I can get a large vehicle to let me do that. If I'm just going to work and it's only me, I can take a small vehicle. A lot more flexibility with the idea of mobility as a service. It's something that can come and go from your life depending on what you need and when you need it, rather than a fixed cost investment.
And who are the kinds of people that are using, do we say MaaS? MaaS? MaaS?
Oh no, well there's SaaS, software as a service. So SaaS, you could say MaaS, I guess.
MaaS?
I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you could say MaaS.
We could decide that right here. We can just go for that from now on.
Who are the kinds of people that are using it?
All of us. If anyone's gotten an Uber recently or Taxify or Ola, that's one version of mobility as a service.
Yeah, I think the idea of MaaS is really to provide a platform where all your mobility options are available. So once you have that, anyone could use that. Anyone that wants to use shared mobility services in public transports, you have access to all your options through a single platform eventually. And it encourages people out of their cars and to use more shared mobility services.
And Ségolène, where do you see the future of transportation? Is it automated?
I think to some extent it's already automated. So you already have automated metros and automated trains doing public transport. So it will get more and more automated as we move forward. But I think that you'll still have more traditional public transport solutions as well. And it will be probably a balance between on-demand services that are at some extent automated because they calculate the optimal route depending on who's traveling and how you can optimize the shared itinerary of a vehicle, and then mass transit options that carry more people to a given area.
And moving forward with automated transport, do you think the focus will be on personal transport or public or maybe somewhere in between?
I think it's something in between. So we see certainly that there's a mix of private and public transport happening in the mobility space. But through digitalization, you're able to provide more of a personalized service to people through their app. And what you can imagine is that people are able to customize their trip depending on their mood of the day or the weather, or if they're wearing high heels potentially, and they have an itinerary proposed to them through the different mobility options that they have.
I think that idea of, there used to only be sort of two extremes. You've got public transport, so I'm on a bus with 50 people I don't know and it's on a set path or a train, or I drive a car or I get a taxi. I think there's this middle ground between, with this idea of I can get in a car with people I don't know, but there's only 3 or 4 of us traveling. We're going to a similar destination, so we have the efficient use of private vehicles, the efficient use of smaller vehicles to sort of fill in those gaps where mass public transport can't reach. Even in a city like New York with millions of people and a really sophisticated mass transport system, there's still millions of cars coming in and out of New York City every day. And that's because, even their mass public transport hasn't solved that issue of getting to every single person's doorstep. And I think that some of these sort of hybrid options in between, these ideas like Uber Pool and there's other options out there, can start to bridge that gap and sort of bring transport to more people.
And I suppose this has huge implications for people with limited mobility as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, my next door neighbour actually, I noticed every time I was leaving the house, she would get a taxi to take her somewhere. She can't walk incredibly well. I had a conversation with her about Uber Pool, and she's using that now to get places, and it's half the cost of what it would be otherwise. So this idea of, like I said, getting closer to people's homes, getting closer to their houses, not having to rely on living near a main artery of public transport, does open things up a lot, yeah.
And Anthony, what does the data tell us about how people's movement is changing? Does it differ from, say, what people say about how they'd like to move now and what they project for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when ride-sharing first came along, people thought of it as a replacement for a taxi, and that was it. And, it is in some ways, but actually I think ride-sharing isn't necessarily just a replacement for a taxi, it's a replacement for owning a vehicle altogether. And the actual pool of people, now with the speed and convenience and price of ride-sharing, people are taking ride-sharing or transport in ways that they wouldn't have otherwise. They're using those trips more often to go to more places. And I'm an example of this. My wife and I, we have a child. We've only had one car in our household for the last 4 or 5 years. And we've found that we can use ride-sharing services to fill in that gap. I also have an electric bike that I also use to get to work in other places. So I'm one of those geeky guys with the green helmet riding around. But I find that between those two things, we've saved money. It's more convenient. I don't have to worry about parking. I can have a few drinks when I'm out. So I think that, look, people's transport patterns and behaviours are changing as things get easier, as they get more simple and cost-effective. They're travelling more and they're taking advantage of the services in their city.
And what is the future of on-demand services? Are we going to end up ride-sharing services like Uber Pool, as you mentioned? I mean, sharing vehicles like GoGet or Drive My Car, or are we just simply going to do away with cars altogether and jump onto smart buses?
Well, it's a good question. I guess, the on-demand services that we operate, we certainly saw that social inclusion aspect and the fact that people, it gets them closer to using a public transport. So I think in the future, more and more you'll see an integration of on-demand and mass transit transport solutions operating to provide that end-to-end journey to people and prevent them from taking their individual cars, but more using shared mobility services for their end-to-end journey moving forward.
I mean, I always sort of think of this as like 1994 of the internet. There's a lot of potential, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of conversation. We don't really know what's going to take off. Who's going to be Alta Vista? Who's going to be Ask Jeeves? Who's going to be the Google that sort of dominates in the future? But either way, we know that it's past the tipping point of it's going to happen in one way or another. Autonomous driving, better safety, ride sharing, all of this is already past that tipping point. Now it's about seeing what do those trends mean for us and which companies, I guess, thrive in that new environment.
Well, I imagine there must be quite a large area of opportunity for startups in the on-demand world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there absolutely is. I think there's opportunities for disruption here. You know, it's not like look, there's obviously some big players already in the market. I've mentioned some of them earlier, but there's a lot of niche areas that different types of technology and organizations can fit into. We've seen, at least here in Sydney, all the various bike sharing, electric scooter sort of companies sort of coming along. I think things like that are going to keep on evolving, and startups have a real opportunity to grab a stake in this because, look, it is still such a new industry.
We talk about AI, we talk about the robot revolution, people worry about losing their jobs. I mean, what happens to all the drivers in this situation? Yeah. New jobs for drivers.
Yeah, new jobs for drivers, yeah. I think, I think it was from the US that, driving is the job that is most common. All the trucks, buses, taxis, individuals as well. Our cities are built around cars and housing cars and transporting cars and clearways, and I think once we start to see the air cleaning up, less people dying, there's going to be new jobs for those people. It could be tending to the green grasses that we have now in the city instead of highways and byways. So I think it's a net positive, but look, with anything like this, there's going to be disruption as we get there. And yeah, not everyone's going to be a short-term winner, but I think we'll all be a long-term winner.
Well, it turns out Australia may be the perfect place to trial new mobility as a service option. Our reporter Sarah Isaka took a sneak peek at what's happening.
These days, we're all familiar with the term ride sharing. Ubers, Olas, taxis, buses, any kind of group transport really. Well, now there's a new kind of ride sharing, and it's making transport across the water readily available to anyone, anytime. I'm on my way to meet with the people behind the new app Ahoy and get an insight from a passenger who's been giving it a go.
Ahoy came about when we were looking at our little boats that were already running around Sydney Harbour, and we were thinking, how can we connect people more easily to these? It was that little moment when we thought there's got to be a technological solution to this. We thought about the Uber app and how that works, and we thought, well, we can connect people by an app, by technology, to the boat.
For my friend Adam, this kind of personalised service, accessed via his phone, is something that could open up a world of possibility to how he gets around each day.
As a commuter with public transport, Ahoy would be something I could definitely see myself using. I think it's an absolutely incredible way for anyone to access the harbour, and definitely a step in the right direction in terms of utilising technology to its full potential.
When a passenger wants to book with Ahoy, they open it up, they open up Ahoy, they tap the wharf they're coming from, they select the wharf that they want to go to, and then they confirm the booking. The captain of the ship gets a notification to tell them that they need to go pick the passenger up, and then the passenger gets told it's been accepted.
I've just ordered a ferry via the Ahoy app, and it's going to be here in a few minutes, which is incredible.
The Ahoy app has GPS, which allows the customer to track exactly where the boat is, and it allows us to know how many passengers are on the wharf ready for pickup.
The idea of on-demand actually reduces congestion across the city. What we're looking to do is to use smaller vessels more frequently. What it'll do is it'll create a network of boats being used as and when they're needed. So it'll actually work to help to reduce congestion across the harbour.
Currently, with scheduled timetable services, it's difficult to know whether there is a demand for certain times during the day. So the app is a great tool in allowing us to go directly to the customer and make a more efficient service for them and for us as well.
People will be able to come down, use an Opal card, get a ferry when they want to where they want to go. In the future, that will extend out to being able to transport right across the network on demand from end to end. True mobility as a service.
The Ahoy app is taking ride sharing onto our waters, making our city transportation more flexible, accessible and convenient for everyone. I'm not sure where the ride sharing revolution will go, but if it's making more people move, I'm all aboard.
So it seems like the future of personal transport might be less about cities full of segways and more about getting the transport we need on demand. But it might not all be Uber and Lyft or public transport. It may lie somewhere in between. Ride Austin, for example, is a not-for-profit run by the City of Austin, which charges $2 off the top, and the driver keeps the entire fare, including tip. Could it be that the disruptors get disrupted?
I hope so. I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. It's like any piece of technology. New players come in, they're faster, they're more agile, they can make a difference, they can get in the way and shift things up.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to know. I mean, the market has already been disrupted, so I think the importance is to look at what people need, what's their mobility trends, what they're looking for, and depending on that, making sure that you adapt the different options to what their needs are.
There's definitely, though, a case where these companies are trying to set up walls and moats around them, and one of the challenges with ride sharing is you need a lot of drivers and you need a lot of passengers. You need to keep those things in equilibrium. And so you might offer discounts to passengers to encourage more of them, or discounts or extra pay to drivers to encourage more of them. And trying to figure out that balance is tricky. So for a new starter coming along, it's not simple. There is a barrier to entry. Obviously it's possible and is going to keep on happening, but I wouldn't want to start a ride-sharing company right now. I don't think there's many margins in it. It's very competitive. But there's going to be other pieces of technology, other areas around the side that'll absolutely get snapped up by disruptors.
So, Anthony, right now, one car and an electric bike, is that right?
That's right, yep.
How will you be travelling in 2030?
I don't think I'll have a car. My daughter's 1 year old, and I thought, I don't know if she's ever going to learn to drive. In fact, I hope she never learns to drive, because technology's gotten to the point where a safe electric car will pick her up wherever she wants. I'll be able to track on an app that she's safe and she's fine and sticking to the speed limit. So look, I think I won't own a car, but I'll be doing a lot more transport. I'll be living further from the city, but able to commute in, sleep in the car on the way in. I'm excited about this future. I think it's going to be awesome.
What about you, Ségolène?
Well, I've got 2 kids, and they asked me the other day, how long does it take to do your driving license? And I said, we probably won't need one, so so they were quite relieved for that. But I think, living in a more livable environment and sustainable through electric vehicles and not owning a car would probably be a good perspective for the future.
Hoverboard, 100% of the time. So the future of transport may be transport companies that reflect their users. If your customers care about cost, ethics, the planet, and helping others have fair access to mobility, then you should too. And that just might be your competitive edge. That's all we have time for, so thank you so much to Ségolène and Anthony. And thanks to you for watching. I'm Stephanie Bendixsen, and until next time, keep on moving.